my litmus test, unfortunately, was the chase rules because I wrote the chase rules for fifth edition, unplay tested. They just like we had to fill in a page or two of content. I'll write some chase rules. Literally just writing them, copy edit them, and threw them in. And so when I got the new DMG, I flipped the chase rules. So like, of course, they will replace my incredibly terrible chase rules with usable chase rules because they've been working. They had 4 years to work on this, and not only was it my crappy chase rules, but they actually made them worse because they changed how exhaustion worked, and they didn't catch that the old rules relied on the prior version of exhaustion. So they changed exhaustion. They didn't update the chase rules. And so I had a bad feeling like, did anyone actually look at this text before they put it? And then when the monster, I looked at the previews for it and like, this isn't like, I'm still just going to use the Matt Colville monster manual, the MCDM one. So I actually didn't buy it. I just couldn't bring myself.
Today's guest is a writer and designer who worked for Wizards of the Coast for 18 years as a senior manager for Dungeons & Dragons and was part of the design team of D&D 4th edition and a co-lead designer of the hugely popular 5th edition of the game. In 2024, he became the executive producer of role-playing games at Chaosium and is currently heading up the new variants of RuneQuest. Mr. Mike Mearls.
Hello.
So just to explain, we have someone you probably all, well, some of you might know, he's got this little YouTube channel, couple of hundred subscribers. He loses per day.
Too.
Yeah,
it's all my mom.
I have Seth Skorkowski helping me out today because I felt like I needed it with Mike. Plus, he's met Mike. So let's.
I'm here because Bud's my game master, and I have to be here.
Yeah.
Are you just getting like bonus XP or like a
no, in Delta Green, what I'll do is I won't kill his character because it's just getting worse, isn't it?
Oh. Man, I don't even know how I'm even going to talk about that campaign when we're done. And I
know, we need the trigger warning more.
Jesus.
It's Delta Green, right? That's what you get with the Senate.
Oh, but this campaign, it's God's teeth, and it's horrific and ways.
Bud told us when we started, like, this has all the trigger warnings. And we're like, okay, yeah, whatever. And they were playing like, wow, Bud was not kidding. There are things I didn't even know were trigger warnings, but I know they are now.
Learn the hard way.
It's and honestly, I've just finished reading the final chapter, and I'm like, it's got worse. It's got worse than the first chapter.
That's so fucking weird.
Okay, so let's go into the A's or B's. These are just a little bit of an icebreaker. Let's get your opinion. Maybe might question you about them. People come up with weird shit when we do this. From Keith and the Titter Pigs, we asked them with a straight face, would you rather wrestle a gorilla or an alligator? And he said a gorilla.
Okay.
A gorilla can literally tear you in half like the Hulk did to Wolverine.
Yeah.
But he thinks he can wrestle a gorilla. And then we were saying, are you sure you want to pick that, Keith? And he went, I reckon I could wrestle a gorilla.
Okay. Well, there you go. So, I like the confidence.
Take it away then, Seth.
Okay, so Mike, A or B, Lamentations of the Flame Princess or Myfarog? Is that how you pronounce that?
Myfarog, I think.
Okay, no. Lamentations. Like, there's like people who have beef with like some of the Lamentations content, but as far as I know, like Myfarog was written by a straight up white supremacist, right?
And a murderer and an arsonist.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, no, that's an easy one. Like,
that is a bit of an easy one to be fair.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So A or B, Torg or GURPS?
Okay, I'm gonna say GURPS because I actually ran a very fun GURPS atomic horror game. And I've never actually played Torg. I know of Torg.
Neither have I.
Played it.
I've never played it. And yeah, I know people who swear by it.
I've never played either. And so with GURPS, the reason I haven't played it is deep down recessed in the 90s, people would just be all like, D&D sucks, you should play GURPS. And so that like put this pin in my head of like, I will never play this game just to spite some random guy in the dorm rooms in 1998. And even years later, when I'm interested in playing GURPS, I just haven't gotten around to it. It's like on some unconscious level, there's 20-year-old me still going death first. And I just have never checked it out.
It's true that like that was Usenet. Like if you wanted to summon the GURPS fans on Usenet back in the ancient days, and there was only one forum basically. Yeah, just go to Rec Games FRP Miss and ask, hey, I'm looking to like run genre X with like, tone Y, and what should I use? And it would always turn into a fight over why GURPS was the best. Like Champions and Hero fans were never like that. Like, cause they kind of knew like, hey, if you're playing Hero, you're getting very like techie. So they kind of knew like the kind of games that it would work for. But GURPS advocates were like GURPS for everything. I mean, there was GURPS Werewolf the Apocalypse. There was GURPS Traveler. I played GURPS Atomic Horror, which was funny because I think the challenge with GURPS was the game is super simple, but they always made the rule books like huge and like they always were going for that technical audience that wanted everything. If you go back and look at GURPS, I think I have the second edition box set kicking around somewhere. It's like super great. Like if you just keep it simple, like it's fantastic. And that's why when I used to run my Atomic Horror game, we just used the basic bare bones system and then a few of the optional rules to play. So
I mean, there was about 1 million books for GURPS as well, wasn't there?
Oh yeah, it was like the 80s and 90s. There was like a GURPS book like every quarter, every month, every genre. So just to give the example, like GURPS. So I ran an Atomic Horror campaign. That was basically the GURPS game of playing Plan 9 from outer space. Like all those 50s movies, and I made it kind of funny. We would see, movies like Them, if you remember those, The Day the Earth Stood Still, with a comedic sort of tone to it. So, that was like one of my most successful games back in the 90s. And it was just, I think that's one of the tricks of GURPS is just keep it simple, add stuff only if you need to. So
as I've gotten older, I thought, man, I bet GURPS had actually been absolutely my jam if the people who tried to talk me into it hadn't been so abrasive. But I still have never checked it out.
Abrasive people on the internet? Never.
Well, I was referred to GURPS players as like the vegans of role playing.
How do you know when someone's a vegan? Oh, don't worry, they'll tell you.
Yeah. No, I say if you do like gaming archaeology, like okay, like you have different like, oh, we can tell how old this is because like the sediments next to it. You could tell how old an internet discussion is by the frequency of GURPS being mentioned as the system you should be playing, right? Because you can tell, like, literally that has like dying off literally because GURPS is a game. I know they haven't really tried to relaunch or anything lately, and I think 4th edition came out like in 2003. So I think that was their last big push with it. So yeah, you could just see that dying off over time. But man, yeah, the 90s, like that was. I was into GURPS before I got online, so I was already kind of immune to that. I could be like, yeah, of course I could use GURPS, but because I think I ran my Atomic Horror game in college, and we played GURPS in high school with it too. So yeah.
So why do you think there wasn't as much take up of it, considering it was meant to be a generic system?
Well, that's okay. So now, like, this is my TED talk. So I think you saw it so much in the 80s and 90s because the play culture was very much system first. And now I think, yes, system matters, but I think now what people want is they want a system and a setting that combine. Whereas in the 80s and 90s, there's more, well, just like you can use GURPS to play anything. Now, I don't think that would fly because I think people would say, well, if you're playing an Atomic Horror game, like this funny 50s science fiction send-up game, you'd want a custom system for that. And the funny thing is GURPS, to me, when it worked is when it did stuff like that. So as an example, GURPS has this massive list of skills. But in the Atomic Horror game, they gave you an optional skill you could use called science with an exclamation point. And the idea was whenever you wanted to explain something or do something, no matter how absurd, you're like, well, we'll use science, right? The gamma rays will strengthen us by cleansing, whatever. It'd be some dumb, like 50s style radioactivity is good explanation. And you'd roll your science with an exclamation point skill. And that was part of what made it fun was like, you just have someone playing this like straight, like lace, like scientist giving this absurd idea. but it works because the science roll was successful, right? Like, or like in the movie where like there's the monster and the guy's like, well, of course it's afraid of sunlight because they're probably from Pluto and blah, like this convoluted explanation that of course is accurate because that's how the movie works. It would also do things like that, right? So it's like, oh, it's this weird creature. Well, I'll explain how it works. And, oh, I made my science rolls. That is how it works, even though it makes no sense, right? Like, how would I possibly? What are the chances of me being right by randomly guessing at how this thing works? Well, if you make your science with an exclamation point roll, of course, because we're playing in a 50s, movie, science fiction movie, and that's how it worked, right? Like, so it could do that. But yeah, it was such a fun game.
It's like a bit like Pulp Cthulhu, really, isn't it? The way you explain it like that.
Exactly, yeah. Except
like the
it was
weird
like
science kind of thing.
Yeah. And it was basically they were dealing with it was called Plan 10 from outer space. So the aliens came back. This is their 10th plan to try to take over the world. So yeah, it was decidedly unserious. So
the thing is, like, I remember going through, I think probably all of us did, the phase where it's like the one system to rule them all that I could plug into everything. And that's fun, but then sometimes it's a chore trying to force it to work in certain ways. And then you play a game that's doing what it's designed, like the system's designed to do it. It's like, well, this is like a million times better. And so like, that was my passing phase of a universal system is to rule them all. Is like, no, but it was a fun time.
To this day, I don't even know what Torg's about. I've honestly no idea.
So as far as Torg is literally about everything. Like it's just every genre has like a zone on Earth dedicated to it. So and then because wasn't it something like there's all these different dimensions that simultaneously invade Earth?
I mean, you tell me. I don't know.
Yeah, I knew it only through White Wolf magazine articles to make myself like really date myself, like reading about it. Like I think like North America was like this lost world continent, like dinosaurs running around. And, England was a fantasy realm with like elves and dwarves and halflings, and you would travel between them. And, yeah. That's where we keep our history. So,
okay. So next up, A or B, D&D 4th edition or 5th edition?
So that's a great question. Because the thing is, I'm like super like just done with 5th edition right now. Like I just don't. So I think I'd say 4th edition because it's got more of like I think it'd be more fun to prep and run that. Even though I worked on both and I played 5th a lot, but so I was just at GaryCon last week, and what I realized was I'm kind of just done with 5th edition because I just feel like, and I think this is something that happens with every role playing game. Like I got everything I wanted to get out of it, and now like playing it just feels like, okay, why am I doing this? Like, is this helping me? Like I feel like I've had to like hack it so much to get it to do what I want to do, that it's just not feeling like, yeah, it's worth the outlay. Where like when I ran 4th edition, and actually it was great because some of the players were not big 4th edition fans, and they really enjoyed it. And Keith Baker, the creator of Eberron, wrote the adventure, and he did a really great job of kind of doing what you need to do in 4th, which is like build custom monsters for your encounter or your adventure, because it is so dependent on like the characters and everything that's going on, that the fights were really fun. Like he had these really cool monsters that were kind of very threatening, which is like when people talk about 4th edition going sideways, I think they're usually talking about two things. Either the game's just too complicated for what they want. There's so much going on, they don't like tracking it, and play just drags out. Or they're doing that with...
Tell me about it.
Yeah, well, no, that's what can happen, because the mat is both, there's a lot of complexity and a lot of tracking. It would have worked great on a computer. But also sometimes the monsters can just feel too weak. Kind of the 5th edition problem of like, this fight, we know how it's going to end, but it's going to take us an hour to get there. So what's the point? And so, yeah, we ran some 4th edition fights with like very deadly monsters, and they're very simple and easy to run. So it let the players do the teamwork thing, where like, and it really shined to kind of show the game off. So yeah, I'd rather play 4th than 5th. Right.
The last time I did the podcast, we spoke to Kelsey, and Kelsey had the same kind of thoughts about it we did, because we felt it became very homogenized. Everyone turned into a wizard with a set of cards of powers, and everyone's abilities were just a warrior's way of doing the same damage, and it drove us and also conditions ruined the game for us. But the one thing I always tell people was we had a single combat that lasted for 3 sessions,
What are you? Was
not
this
rounds.
Dragon Ball Z? With the
It was a big bad. It was a Dracolich. But the thing is, with 4th edition, when you hit a certain point, you become bloodied, which would then activate another power, which would damage everyone. And then, so you had to spend all them rounds healing to be able to carry on fighting there. Meanwhile, it's still attacking you. And it become ridiculous. With the conditions just became ridiculous. And I think you're right. It would have worked really well on a computer, which leads you to the next thing, which was you couldn't make up a character without the character generator.
Yeah. Yeah, it really relied on that, and we kept, that was online and running for. I mean, I don't know when it shut down. It may have been just pre-pandemic, but it was up and running for years after 5th edition launch because there's still people using it. It made things easier, but yeah, it was kind of to the point where like I never played 4th just using a paper character sheet. Like I think I always used the digital tools because I just couldn't imagine doing it without it. Just so each power had to be math figured out for it, and all that stuff. It just was I think that's its main thing. I always liked it when we would talk about D&D when I worked at Wizards. I'd always talk about it in terms of the story of D&D to the staggering majority of your fans is the story of the player's handbook. They go from one player's handbook to the next. And if going from one player's handbook to the next doesn't make sense, that's when people walk away. So like first to second, like regardless of the fact second's easier to run, the art style was very different. It was kind of dismissive of dungeons. Things were just like, where's the monk? It's just missing. Why? The half-orc's missing. Why is the half-orc missing? And even though like, the bard's here and that's cool, and ranger was cooler, it still just like didn't necessarily make any sense unless you were following along in Dragon Magazine and really steeped in the culture. Second to third, the thing was one of those things where it's like, the art was just cooler, it was more contemporary. Like Diablo was a thing in 2000, so that sort of spiky thing made sense. And you could just the skill system is just better. The half-orc and monk are back. The game's easier to play now. Any character can try hiding. Like these things that were very unclear or difficult to use are now much easier. And then third to fourth was just like, what? Like if you gave someone a 3-5 players handbook, have them learn that game, then they gave them the 4th edition players handbook. It just made no sense. Like, why does this follow that? Well, it's the same thing. If you played the game super hardcore and followed everything very closely, the evolution made sense. But if you were just a player's handbook owner, it was nonsense. Like that's why you'd end up going to Pathfinder, because Pathfinder was just like, it's 3-5 but cleaned up, and that made sense.
Yeah, it was a sideways step, Pathfinder, really, wasn't it? I mean, one of the things that bothered me about 4th edition to 5th edition, and it's probably only me and my group, but there was a great class in 4th edition that never got ported over, which was the Warlord.
Yeah. Do you know why it didn't get ported over? Did we? I don't think we ever talked about this. So we did a lot of surveys on 4th edition. I'm sorry, for 5th edition. Yeah. And I think it's because it was the 4th edition class. But it never had much demand. Like we never saw it. I think like when we asked people of like what missing classes do you want to see added to the game, I think the Scion beat it up in the Artificer. I think it was Artificer and Scion, and then there was like a big gap. Then there was the Warlord. And I just think it was one of those things, since it was 4th edition only, I think most people just never even experienced it. They just never saw it because the edition had so much trouble getting traction. It's also tricky in design because it relies on a lot of off-turn actions, and that was one of the things we found like would slow the game down. Like if another player let you do something, like there's this idea TTRPG designers get, like, let's engage all the players all the time. But when you actually watch people play, it's like people like having that downtime, and like they don't pay attention, but in a lot of ways that's a feature, not a bug, because they want to take a time off or socialize or just relax. So the idea of like having to like wait for the Warlord's turn and then they would start telling you what to do, like that was something that I think was tricky to implement in a system where you're trying to make it much more relaxed, especially if you're in a 4th edition where like you had to play very optimally to get the most out of your character. Yeah, but I think that's a good example right now. Like 5th edition's been around 10 years. So like, well, why wouldn't you do something very different? I don't know. Like, I think that's part of why I'm burned out on 5th. It's just like, okay, we've done that for 10 years. So let's try doing new things now. And I feel like I'm not seeing a lot of new things. I'm seeing new games rather than new things within 5th. So
yeah. Okay, so this will be the last AOB then.
Okay.
Right. So,
Mike, you rather have no arms or legs?
Ooh, I'd rather have no arms and no legs. No legs.
I mean, that's the easiest choice in
Same.
the world,
Yeah.
surely.
I like painting miniatures, and like if I'm doing stuff with my legs because I have to. The whereas I do a lot of things with my arms, I'm like, this is fun, like playing video games. So yeah, that's an easy one for me.
Because my brother has his own podcast, and he asked me that when I went on to have a chat, and he asked me that, and we broke down laughing. I said to him, who would pick no arms?
I mean,
You'd have to be
the
insane.
drawback would be like obviously there's like a zombie apocalypse. You're like, okay, but I think like almost all the cases where it's like you are now in a really bad spot because you don't have the infrastructure to support you, like, you know, if you're using a wheelchair or something, is also like, well, then society is completely boned. So like, I don't think having, like, if I have no arms, it's not like I have an easier time getting around if society collapses, right? So I might as well.
Yeah, but people with no legs can't wield guns, but they also can't open doors. Well, people with no arms can't open doors.
You heretic! You never watched my left foot. You saw the video of that archer girl that shoots arrows with her toes. It's
Yeah, I mean, that's not representative of every person
Wait.
that has no arms, though, is it?
I thought all double amputees were like that.
Unfortunately not. I think the world would be a better place if they could use
Way more awesome.
the feet like that, yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the next bit. So we ask all of our guests this one, and we haven't had anyone say that they don't have a story yet. Kelsey had two spooky stories, and his were good as well. So have you ever had anything happen to you, or you ever seen a ghost or encountered something strange in the woods, or seen a UFO, or something you couldn't really explain?
All right, so here's my weird one, because sometimes I look back at my life and I'm like, how did I get so lucky? Like all this stuff that I like, you know, all these things I've got. And so I have a theory about that. And this might not be spooky. I don't know, maybe it's just weird, or maybe it's just something. But so I moved to New York City in the late 90s. And I have this very vivid memory that is stuck in my head very vividly of going to cross the street and almost getting hit by a speeding taxi. Like, I vividly feel like the wind going by. And my theory is I actually got hit by that taxi. And I am sprawled out across Broadway, dying right now. And all of my life since then has just been like an occurrence in Owl Creek Bridge. Like, I'm just waiting to like bleed out. Because I mean, when I moved to New York, I was like totally had no direction in life, had nothing going, nothing going for me, no idea what to do. And then when I moved there, I started writing and I started getting work, and I like lost a bunch of weight and like got like a lot better like emotionally and like, and mental health wise. And like since then, I've had this really great life. And it's so interesting to think, like, it's like if you look at my life, it's like pre almost getting pancaked by a taxi and post almost getting pancaked by a taxi. And so I think I got pancaked by that taxi. And this is all just like the dreams, my brain firing off, like the Emperor's Beer story. And I'm actually sprawled out, EMTs around me, dying on Broadway in New York City, circa like February 1999. That's my theory.
I mean, when you come round, you're going to make a lot of money betting on Apple stock.
Yeah, no, I don't think I'm coming back. Like, I think that's why
I don't know. It could be kind of like the Mearls version of sliding doors, if you remember that old.
Oh yeah,
like somewhere there's a timeline, where you actually did get hit by the taxi, but then your life somehow became even better. You're like God Emperor now, and
on his golden throne.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, but so that's like, and that's otherwise like the only other like creepy thing. Actually, I haven't had too many like inexplicable things happen to me. I think in part because my family was super into horror movies. So I think I was just inured to it. Like I remember watching The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, like when I was 7. I think we had it on VHS. Like my parents had no concept of like inappropriate media for children. So like when kids would say, "Oh, my parents took me to the Care Bear movie," I'd be like, "What? People go to see those? Why?" Right? Like, like we watched The Deer Hunter this weekend, right? Like when I was like in second grade, like that's just right. Like that's just how my parents were. They had no concept of stuff that wasn't good for kids. So I like, so I don't know if it's just something where I was just very accepting, like, oh, that's weird. Oh, that guy's bleeding from his head. Oh, well, that's normal, right? Like, I don't really. Plus, my dad was a volunteer firefighter in our little hometown, and so sometimes like we'd be driving in his pickup truck, and he had the radio in his car, the scanner, and there's an accident, and he would just, and it was actually, to me as a kid, it was awesome. Like, he had the siren that he would, like, with the magnet, he'd flop on the top of his truck and plug it in, and we'd get to drive like as fast as we wanted, not wearing seatbelts. It's like 1982, right? Like, this is before people figured out that going through, windshield's not a great idea. And we get to tear across town to an accident scene, and I like see like, oh, that guy's face. There's a lot of blood on that windshield and stuff. And so I don't know. I think I just got like inured to that stuff as a young kid, because it was just like, we raised and slaughtered pigs when I was very young. I don't have many conscious memories of it, but I know of it. So I don't know if that just like, that's just normal, right? Like, creepy stuff is just very like horse, right? Like, I don't know, like, because I other than that like getting almost killed by a taxi, maybe actually getting killed by a taxi, I might be your first guest who's like, I don't know if I ever really ran into anything I couldn't like explain, or that I found deeply unsettling or like weird, because I think I got all that in when I was like 6. And that just like maxed out my trauma meters, and now I'm like, whatever, right? Like, there's a homeless guy walking around and his hands cut off and his blood spraying everywhere. I guess we should call that. Okay, like, yeah.
Do you think?
So it's just like, yeah, it's just this very weird thing about like, a quirk of my background.
I mean, the thing is that the thing, even though it was made in 1982. It's still horrifying now.
Oh yeah, and it was just like
because of the practical effects.
Oh yeah, those practical effects are fantastic. And you said that to me, my mom. I think my mom's attitude was like, rated R means kids at under 17 shouldn't watch this unless there's an adult there. Okay, I'm there, so it's fine. Yeah. It's okay. Like, we can watch anything, because it's not like we're showing NC-17 stuff, right? Which is just not allowed. So yeah, I remember going to see, like, when I was. God, when did Jaws 3 come out? Was that 83, 84?
I don't know. I've blanked that out of my memory, along with Jaws 4 and Jaws 2. And all the Jawses apart from the first one.
The first one seemed really good. But yeah, we would go to the movies all the time. My mom would just take me to see horror movies, because it's just like, well, I got this kid and I want to go see, whatever the movie was, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. Well, I'll just bring the kid with me. I can't leave the kid at home. So we'll just go to the theater. And the kid will get yeah.
These days, the police would.
I know, right? Like, but that was such a thing for like the 80s. Like, people just didn't. I mean, kids today. I had this insight because I have a daughter. She's 10, and it's like, I forget if I read this or I was thinking about it, but just like, I had this moment when I was thinking, I spent a lot of time worried about, is my child entertained and engaged by her environment? And I just thought, man, when I was growing up, I don't think that occurred to anybody. I think they're more like, is the kid physically crippled, like not injured's fine, injured's okay, but like, will the kid heal given enough time? Yes, no, yes, fine, no, okay, I guess we need to go to the hospital, right? Like, but it was just very like, there's the adult world and the kids world, and they would just like, I would spend like days essentially unsupervised, right? Like,
well, it's like the whole,
it's a Gen X thing, though,
it's
isn't
10
it?
o'clock, do you know where your children are, would come on like right after the news. It's kind of like the way the parents would be like, wait, hold on, where the hell's our kid? And that was just how you grew up.
I mean, during the summer, we used to like kind of go out at 9 o'clock in the morning and come back when it was dark, and our parents didn't know where we were, but we were okay.
And I don't know.
But there was a lot fewer cars on the road then, to be fair.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's just,
my parents like to tell me how it was like, what was a safer time, and then I will tell them exactly how many infamous serial killers came out of the 70s.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was the thing. I remember finding last time I was at my parents' house years ago. I was going through some old papers, and in 3rd grade we did this class project where it's like a newspaper. Each kid wrote like a page. And it was like a cartoon or some drawings. And I think at least half those stories were about serial killers and child kidnappings, right? Like, because, I mean, obviously that was like a big deal back then, like when people started to figure out, because people were communicating, right? Like, it wasn't like, like something could happen in Omaha, but you wouldn't hear about it anywhere else. The national news was not it was Washington, D.C. was national news, not something weird happened over here,
Dude, when I was a kid, there was this game that was possessed by the devil himself, and preachers would throw the books into fires, and like demons would scream, and it would make you go crazy and kill your parents. And Oprah and 60 Minutes, they all talked about it. And, don't go in the steam tunnels. I mean, that was the world I grew up in, with devil games.
Well, That actually leads me on to my first question that I have for you is, was D&D the first role-playing game you ever played?
It was. So yeah, I was exposed to it. It was around 81, 82 thereabouts when the first red, like I guess like magenta box came out with the Errol Otis art. So I inherited a Holmes Basic rule book that was stapled together and missing the cover from my brother. He sold it to me for like $1. Because he used to do Boy Scouts scouting, and so they would play D&D when they went camping. So I had a copy. That's why I inherited, because I just thought it was this really interesting idea. And so yeah, that was the first game. And growing up in the middle of nowhere, it's not like, I mean, I first stepped foot into an actual hobby store that carried games, so not even a game store, probably in 1991. 1990, 91. Yeah, I was like 15, because other than that, it was just, Walden books, which later, like in the late 80s, would carry other role-playing games. But before that, I bought all my games that I at a toy store. Child World was a chain store in New England. And that's where I used to buy D&D stuff.
Do you know what? We've had a few guests say something similar, that they used to buy D&D.
Yeah. My old Dungeon Master had Toys R Us stickers on the front of all his first edition books. I always thought that was amazing.
Yeah, that's where I remember going. It was over near the coloring books in the front of the store. Was where they had the D&D stuff. And when they liquidated it, it was like $1. Oh, this is great. As a 10-year-old, wasn't thinking big picture, but of course I had no money. I just bought a couple things, but it was just like, oh, wow, this stuff is... No, and it's wild. You think about how people interact with the hobby. I remember buying the first Dragonlance module. I knew nothing about it. I just remember going to Child World and seeing on the shelf this adventure with a dragon on the cover, Dragons of Despair, and buying it. And just being like completely confused, like, what is this? Like, it's talking about crit and all this stuff. I had no idea what to make of it. It was like 2 or 3 years later that I discovered the first novel. But I'm sure, like, yeah, as an 8-year-old kid, it just was like, but I thought it was cool. I was entranced by it. Like, it was so interesting. And it was the dungeon maps and everything. But it was such a, such a weird hobby. Especially at that age, there's no one else I could talk to about it. Like, everyone that I knew who played because I introduced them to it, just because of the age group thing, right? Like, let's try playing this game. Well, one of my friends, I think there was a hobby store like a few towns over. I think his parents took him to it, and he started buying more of the stuff. He was kind of the guy who had all the rule books. But that wasn't until like 6th grade. That was a few years later. And that's when we really started playing. Like, when I was in 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, like, I read the books and like understood them kind of, but we didn't really start playing until we were around 10 or 11.
Yeah, well, that's also the age you're looking at all that art. And it was just because I've had several friends whose introduction to D&D was like, my older brother had the monster manual.
Yeah.
And I just flipped through it looking at pictures. Like, I have multiple friends have given me this exact same story. And it's like, oh yeah, no.
The pictures, yeah.
That was like so much the gateway for so many people, was just like that art. Even the stuff that's not that good now. It's like so inspiring for so many people.
Yeah.
It was because you couldn't see it anywhere else.
There was nothing else like it.
The thing, wasn't it? The only place you could see it was in those books. See, my first game, I consider myself being born into the gaming world with a silver spoon in my mouth, because my first game was RuneQuest.
Oh, wow.
I didn't play D&D. I think I played D&D once, and then played AD&D for many years. I mean, that's to say, you played AD&D to death, didn't you?
I played it till 2008, from 91 to 2008.
Yeah, oh, wow. I ran a 13-year campaign, a 13 actual year campaign, and they got to level, I want to say 16 from level 1. Two of the characters did anyway.
Back when you had levels that was like 1.2 million XPs to get to the next level.
Oh yeah, like ludicrous amounts. And if you found one of those books, that would take you up a level.
Meanwhile, the druid is like, how many to the next level? 50? I don't know. Like,
yeah. But you had to beat up 8 druids like, to gain the level.
But what was the first game that you played that wasn't D&D?
Well, the dumb answer, the lame answer, but the true answer is Star Frontiers, another TSR game, because it was also on sale at Child World.
Okay.
But like the first non-TSR game I played probably would have been Call of Cthulhu, now that I think about it. Or maybe would have been it wasn't until high school. So when I was in middle school, just played D&D, played a little Star Frontiers, but played D&D. And then once I got into high school and I discovered White Wolf magazine. So so my dad, I was with my dad doing errands or something like that. and he went to a discount tool store, hardware store. They had a lot of liquidated closeout stuff. And he's going through trying to find some tools or whatever. And in the back, they had a bunch of magazines, including White Wolf for some reason. They had 2 issues of White Wolf. I guess someone liquidated a bunch, like, whatever, it's just extra stock for magazine distributor. And so there are 2 issues of White Wolf magazine I found. And it was just like, wow. It was like discovering D&D all over again. It was black and white. There were all these ads, these games I had never heard of. And it was like Ars Magica was one of the games they were really covering, and Call of Cthulhu. And I were reading this Call of Cthulhu adventure and thinking, this is incredible. I need to check this out. Because, it was just like, classic Call of Cthulhu. It's an adventure where it's like, there's sanity and the characters go mad and the monsters just eat them. So I had to get in on this game. And I had seen at Walden Books, like I had seen games on the shelf, but I couldn't make head or tail of them because, it's like, if there's a role-playing game on the shelf and the only game you've ever played is Dungeons & Dragons, like how do you get someone to actually buy that second game? Because, you can't flip through it and immediately understand what's going on with it, right? Like you don't have time to sit there and read the entire thing. So that was something which is almost like gave me permission to go, oh, okay, now next time I go to Walden Books, I'm going to look for this Call of Cthulhu game. And I'm going to buy it. And that's a game that with BRP was a simple enough system that I could get it. And I could also understand, oh, this is why I'd want to play this instead of D&D. It's so different. And that kind of opened the floodgates to then checking out lots of other RPGs.
Well, that would have been 2nd edition Call of Cthulhu. That
would have been, I have the book right here. It was 4th edition, I think. Let me pull this out. It's got, right here. This is the literal book I bought.
That's
4th edition at a Walden Books in Methuen, Mass. And the other thing that helped too was the actually just talking about this at work now that I work at Chaosium was of how the art. Speaking of like my mom taking me to see horror movies all the time as a kid. Where is it?
The color plates are fantastic.
It was this one specifically. Where is it? My book is not opening. Here we go. If people can see it, Ward 13. I saw this and thought, oh, that's not art that TSR is putting in their books, right? And that was like, oh, and this is kind of then led to Warhammer and everything of like, I mean, I like D&D, but I always, and the art was cool in the 70s and 80s. Is up my cat's back, so hopefully she does not destroy my computer again. But I think that idea of something that's a little fringy, a little almost cultish, like that just appealed to me because, normal people didn't play role-playing games. So it was kind of cool to see something that's a bit, transgressive. If the teachers caught me with this book, they might, what's all this? And I kind of like that as a nerdy kid, Did
you know that 4th edition is Sandy Peterson's favourite version? And do you know why?
Why?
Because it's got his photograph on the back.
That's too funny. That's very, But,
that sounds like Sandy.
I argued with him that 3rd Ed is better, the Games Workshop version, because it's a beautiful hardback. And it's when you open it, you can smell the time period it's from, because they use the certain ink and a certain paper in the UK. And the plates are beautiful, and it's got some good little adventures in it as well. It's got the werewolf adventure, which was the first I ever played.
No, this is to me
the rescue.
I think it's in 4th edition
so,
too.
Yeah.
So there is a werewolf adventure here. But like looking back, this is also the perfect role-playing game to move to because it's 192 pages and it's everything. Bestiary, how to make characters. Like I almost like it's like how have we forgotten the old magic of like 192 pages? That's all you need. Right? Like,
I know people
overwrite, they overdesign, but like, yeah, I mean, as a 15-year-old kid, 16-year-old, maybe when I bought this, it was so great to have, I have all the rules and I have like 4 or 5 adventures and I have a bestiary. Like this was such an easy sell for me because it's just great. I bought it and like that weekend we were playing it. And I think I wrote The Haunting was the first adventure I ran. And I mean, The Haunting must be in here.
It's the same for a lot of people that though, isn't it? The Haunting is the gateway drug to Call of Cthulhu. I mean, the first book you bought will have been D&D with your own money, I imagine. See, because the first book I bought with my own money for role-playing was the original early 80s Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay.
Oh, wow.
And it's a big, thick tome, and it's got everything you need to play. But when I first saw AD&D, I was blown away by the fact that you needed 2 books to play it, and then you had to buy a monster manual on top of that. And that seems to be the norm.
Greatest hustle D&D ever pulled is convincing you need 3 books. Because also for years people are like, well, why would I pay $50 for this role-playing game when I could buy D&D for $40? And it's like, keep doing the math, buddy. But they stick to it.
Yeah.
Greatest trick.
Whereas with Call of Cthulhu, back in, I know 7th edition was 2 books, but it was all in 1 book, and I never quite understood why people fell for it, because with Warhammer you had everything you needed to play, and you even had an adventure. You had the Oldenhaler contract in the back.
Oh yeah,
and you could play it.
Oh, I think with D&D, most people started off with it. You know, unlike you, Bud, you're weird.
No, I'm privileged. Is what you mean?
You're British. Yeah, weird. But for us, if you're buying the new edition of D&D, you're going to get some playtime out of it. You're going to play it, even if you end up not liking it. So it's like, I can buy these books. I know I'm going to get some playtime. But the thing else, it's like, man, that's a commitment. I have to get that book. I don't know if I'm going to like this game at all. So even though it's 1 book and it might cost as much or a hair more, it's like, it felt like a bigger commitment somehow. Like this is a bigger gamble than if I was to spend that same money on the complete book of dogs or whatever it was.
I didn't have that one.
I bought them all. I don't know, man. Like I loved that period, and it wasn't until years later that I was reading Designers and Dragons and whatnot that I learned how in financial straits they were, because I was always like, 2nd edition was the golden age, man. There was 50 trillion AD&D books, and I loved every damn one of them. And then years later, looking back,
the Priest's Handbook was terrible.
I don't think I read it. I just looked at the pictures, man, because they also did the color plates. And
see, for me, those books are where they started to break the game, because they released 2 classes which fundamentally broke certain rules. One was the Bladesinger.
Yeah, but it's got the good name.
Oh yeah, it's a coolest name. But you could cast spells with 1 hand, and that was always a threat made against wizards. Will cut your hand off. You can't cast spells. And the other one was a dwarven multi-class called the Champion, and it was a fighter priest of, say, Clangeddon or Moradin or whatever. But you had fighter weapon specialization as an ability. Ooh. So that took away the special thing the fighters had, which was they could specialize and get extra attacks, and it gave them to a multi-class. And for me, that's where the game started breaking down, when he started breaking some of the fundamental rules.
Well, I hated the kits. Like, I really hated the kits.
The Witch.
Okay, the AD&D Witch from the 1986 issue 106 of Dragon Magazine is the best damn class that was ever made. I have a special print made of that one. Okay, so...
Because the thing is, it was broken to death, because if you played the Witch, which was the 2nd edition Witch, from the Complete Wizard's Handbook, you got 2,500 XP worth of magic items. How much was an Iron Stone to gain a level? You could buy 3 Iron Stones and become level 4. Yeah, they were not expensive.
Well, that was always the trick with 2nd edition, and I think any RPG, because I don't think you see games doing this as much now, where the content river, where it's just like, it's like multiple books a month, because you can't balance it all. You can't, you're trading volume, you're trading away quality to achieve volume. And that's, they're too technical for that to sustain. I mean, 3rd edition was the same way, right? 4th edition was the same way. Like, the stuff it wasn't play tested. I worked on those books. Yeah. We didn't playtest them. We just wrote stuff and printed it. You heard it here first. They didn't playtest 4th edition.
Look, it doesn't give the guy a break. He's actually dying on the streets of New York right now.
Yeah, bleeding out under a taxi. But there was this. I mean, it was so funny. The culture of role-playing games has changed so much. Like, it was like, was playtesting a thing like 10, 15 years ago? Like, kind of, but like. You just kind of wrote stuff and published it. Like, like I said, I worked on 3rd and 4th edition D&D. That stuff was not playtested. You would write feats and classes, and they'd go in the book.
Explains so much. It explains so much.
And even 5th, we relied a lot on the public playtest. But I don't think that works anymore because I think the audience is big enough now that you're not getting a representative sample. Like I think we did back like in 2012. There were just all these people showing up to like just check out D&D and wanted D&D to come back or whatever, and they were playtesting. But I think now if you're like the type of player who wants to playtest, like you're now a subset of the audience. Where like in 2012 it was the audience because it was so much smaller, and it was the industry was so much smaller. There just weren't many other games other than Pathfinder that were thriving. Other games are being made and they're being sold, but they weren't thriving the way Pathfinder was. And I almost think in some ways 5th edition worked with the public playtest because if you weren't playing Pathfinder, you were probably playtesting 5th edition. And so your feedback was very much based on like playability and ease of the table rather than like, oh, does this thing have better DPR than this other thing? Okay, that's the thing I want. I want the highest DPR. I'm not really thinking in terms of playability and ease of play. Because I think if you were playtesting the new D&D, you were probably just continuing to play the old D&D because why would you take time out of your schedule to playtest when you could just keep playing?
Do you know, it's funny because I've talked about this with various people about the kind of, I mean, 4th edition has almost become a kind of a meme in gaming, more often by people who never played it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, but they will happily sit there and expose, not the word I'm looking for here. Like kind of show off how great D&D 5th edition is without reasons, realizing so many things were stolen from 4th edition.
Oh yeah.
Like death saves were a 4th edition ad, but people think that they're a 5th edition. They're not. There was lots of things, and apparently I've not read it yet, but in the new monster manual, the bloodied conditions come back.
Yeah, bloodied's back. Yep.
Yeah. So this leads me on to my next question.
Okay.
Which is, it's about your little Twitter rant about how
here we go.
Players should experience death
or loss. That's the thing is everyone jumped on the death. And
that's fine.
It's also loss, defeat. Yes.
That's fine. So, as the co-lead designer of 5th edition, why did you make it so impossible to die?
Because I think at the end of the day, so here's the funny thing: when we would run our internal games, we had characters dying all the time. I remember running Forge of Fury and killing multiple characters in that adventure, like 3rd, 4th level characters. And I think fundamentally what happened was there was a significant breakdown between the intent for how monsters should work and how monsters ended up actually working. So if you look at the monster math in the DMG for 5th edition, that monster math shows monsters doing significantly more damage than the monster manual math does. And so I think there was just a breakdown that we just didn't catch until after the game was published. So monsters, I think, they don't hit as hard as they should. So that's the first one. The second one is in terms of like thinking of like, threats and everything. The hit points as you gain levels inflate very rapidly. Your hit points double from 1st to 2nd level. And then they go up by 33%, 24%, and so on, right? Like you're just it's increasing. The rate of change, goes down, but you're still just piling more. And the problem with that approach is fundamentally that you create a sort of narrower window for a successful design. So if you can think about it, if you have like 10 hit points, and I think, okay, this monster should deal 4 points of damage to feel like a threat. But let's say I undershoot by a point. Like I do 3 points. Now you could say, okay, mathematically you're 25% short. But in terms of like your character's ability to like absorb hits, that's like 1 extra hit you could take. But if I'm off by 25% when I'm dealing with like much larger numbers, like that overflow number starts to become fatter and fatter as you gain levels. And so that goes to like, well, instead of taking, 4 hits to go down, it's now 6 or 7. Like, and especially at high levels is when this really kicks in. But you also have like the tyranny of like level progression where it's like, okay, every level you have to get something useful. And so you have a system where it's easier to like end up undershooting. The characters are much more durable. And they just get so many more recovery options as they level up because you're just giving them more stuff. They just have more things to do. I mean, that was one of the big problems in 3rd edition. And I think that's where 5th edition ended up also, unfortunately, was this idea that, no, you're just going to have more and more and more class features that you just ladle on this character as they go up. So your math becomes more error prone as you go up and up. And the players have more options to recover from being killed. Plus, then all the errors that can get baked into that process, like, okay, this is too good and this is too weak. Well, people take the thing that's too good. And that just piles up and piles up and piles up. And I have this personal theory of like, why do we see people play levels 1 to 5? As like that's where most D&D play takes place. I think that's because those are the most dangerous levels, where like the system hasn't gone beyond the point where like, oh, now it really is very hard to threaten the characters. They have so many counters and so many hit points that's the sweet spot, not because just of complexity, but also because of danger. There is a feeling of threat. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the issues you get is just the math combined with just the volume of design. And so it becomes harder and harder to really threaten the characters. Plus, there's an entire problem of like the action economy and challenge rating. I can go into all that stuff. But I think that's the root of it. But yeah, one of my theories is people like low level play because it's dangerous, not just because it's easy. Easy in terms of like there's just less stuff to track. You do feel threatened, and that creates tension in the game, which people like.
The best levels in every D&D that I've ever played have been levels 1 to 7.
Yeah.
Eighth level has always been kind of the part where I, as the dungeon master, started checking out.
Yeah.
Because if I don't feel like I'm challenging them, I just start getting bored.
Yeah.
And I start eyeing the next campaign, and my players would get mad at me because I was like, okay, cool, we're done. Next. And we're right back to, second level or whatever. And then around eighth level, when they were excited, they were about to get ninth, I would kill it again. And, that was what I was known for. But this actually does bring in my next question. So this is from Tiberius, the GM. Mike, you said that bonus actions were a mistake. How would you fix it? That kind of goes on. I've seen systems that move bonus actions to either be free actions or reactions. I've seen ones that use points that allow the players to use them as they desire. Is one of those your solution, or is there a different way?
Yeah. So, conveniently, this addresses the game I'm designing right now on my Patreon. So I think the thing is with actions is I think the action setup you have for a character class needs to serve what the character class is trying to do. So I think the root mistake was adopting the 3rd and 4th edition approach of saying, okay, here's the one action scheme and everyone uses this. I think it's just way too limiting, and it's not like looking at what the character class needs to do. So yes, this is, and I'll just be upfront that this is me just self-servingly saying, here's my new game I'm working on, and here's why you should check it out. But the idea is that each class has a different action economy. It's probably going to make it so I can't do multi-classing, but I'm willing to give it up. So, if you played 4th edition, there was this idea that clerics could attack and cast spells. You'd have like minor action heals. So in my new fantasy game, it's just, that's how all cleric spells work. All cleric spells are you can cast a spell and swing a weapon because you're a warrior priest. That's what you do. The monk gets like 4 little actions they can use, and they're all interrupts. So you can just, you're constantly dodging and jumping and leaping out of the way. And I think what that does is then it lets you make content that's specific to the character class, and you're not worried about portability between classes. Because I think that's also part of it was, D&D inherits so much. And I think that's like kind of the problem that D&D has, like, at least for me right now, is like, I'm kind of done with playing with all these, like, this system design approach that's like still rooted in the 70s. Like, hey, why do wizards get these ultra powerful spells that kind of break the game? Well, back in the 70s, that's how the game worked. So that's just how it works today. And I think the action economy is a similar thing. Well, back in 2000 with 3rd edition, this is what it was decided, and it made sense at the time. But now I think there's much better ways of doing it. And so it's just annoying, like doing 5th edition design is just a drag. Cause it's like, all right, I can't replace the action because if I want to replace the character's action, it has to be super powerful. So I got to make a bonus action thing that'll augment their action, but that's kind of narrow, but it also competes with all this other stuff. So it's just like, to me, it's too constraining. And so that's why I'm not crazy about them. Also, they were supposed to limit complexity. Like, bonus actions are supposed to be a limiter. Like, it'll speed the game up because it'll limit what you can do. And instead, it turned into the exact problem the 4th and 3rd had of like, I have all these actions, so I should use them all and make, put powerful stuff in them. And so they went from being a limiter to being an enabler. And I think that was a bit that got flipped that I wish hadn't, because I think that's It just the game when fifth launched. Go back and read people reading to writing about fifth edition in 2014. They're saying things like, "This game is so elegant. It moves so quickly. It's so easy to play." And then compare that to people playing by the book fifth edition today, and it's night and day. Like it's sludge. It's very sloggy and it's taking forever, and people are like trying to figure out what to do with their character, and it's just sort of I think that the game has just accumulated a lot of cruft over the years, and with 5.5 they kind of doubled down on that because I think they're looking at, well, our audience is people who want to buy character options because we want to sell books of character options, so now we have to like make this even more important. Like, and now all the weapons have little special things they do, and all the subclasses have, not all of them, but most of them have all these bonus action things you can do and resources you can spend and all these different pools and stuff, because I think they're thinking, well, that's what we're going to move to now, is doing kind of more of the third and fourth edition style approach to supplements of just a book a month of character options. So, but we'll see. I mean, I might be wrong, but that's just the vibe I get looking at the design and the products.
Well, you see, you have to have a cast of, writers and designers for that. And so I know you're wrong.
I don't know. Not if you have a large language model that has absorbed all of D&D. Like, there's got to be someone, if they haven't thought of this, they should have, because if they want to be good capitalists, but like, hey, could we just take the entire back catalog of third and fourth edition and have Chat GPT converted to fifth? I mean, why not? Right? Like, in theory, that's exactly what an AI model could do, right? It's good at translating languages. So could you take the Complete Warrior for 3.5 and just translate that into a fifth edition book using just software? Like, you've written an entire 200 something page book with art and layout kind of for free. Like, and then you could probably sell that for $60. And would people buy it? Maybe, right? Like,
yeah, of course, we get the words, yeah.
I mean, the completionists, that's what you did, and that's I can see the books behind Bud. I really envy that corner bookshelf, by the way, Bud. Like
Which one? The one
the little corner one, because
this one.
Yes, that fills a corner. I want that because.
How do you know that's a corner?
Because I can see the curve of the wall behind you.
It's a painting. Whatever. Why? What
because like a true gamer, your house is literally insulated with RPG books. Exactly. Like when the super freeze comes, we will survive because we've literally insulated our houses with full size hardbacks.
Yeah, but I've got a window here. Directly opposite is a window looking out into the back garden, so it's the zombies are climbing in through there. They're not getting through there though. So, based on that, what you just said, I've got a question for someone called Ungainly Shield Maiden, what are your predictions for the hobby with D&D seemingly heading towards a self-inflicted black hole?
Yeah, it's something which, well, I gotta admit, like, I had a lot of anxiety about this before 5.5 finished launch, because I was, looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, I just had this like base level tension, anxiety in my mind, like, okay, what's the new edition of D&D going to do? And now that we've seen it come out, and then I think it's sort of funny that the same month, or the month after the Monster Manual came out, we had $4 million plus TTRPG Kickstarters all in March. I think it was like Shadow Dark. Monty Cook Games had one, I think, for their Old Gods of Appalachia expansions. It's not even a new game. It's like an add-on to a game they launched last year.
Yeah.
I think, didn't Modifius have one? Or I might be misremembering. There were 4. I know there was 4. I'm blanking on the other 2. I didn't go back to my notes. So I think there's a wide range of possibilities. And I think the 3 basic like cases I'd look at in terms of outcomes. And keeping in mind, these are all like clouds of possibilities. But I think like case A is Wizards is committed to like the D&D Beyond business. They see that as their future. They don't see books as their core thing. But they also see D&D Beyond as a publishing platform where they are basically saying, we kind of don't care about D&D being the top. We just want to be the top marketplace. And I think in that world, we see D&D go more and more into like digital exclusive books, probably more player content, like the sort of the dream of the OGL. Like they try to kill the OGL, but I think that was more just they didn't quite understand the market, that they were just being fully evil. And so I think they would say, look, there's so many adventures being written by the audience, like by third-party publishers. And you see this, they publish several of these now, like written by actors, voice actors, of like, oh, it's like Deborah Ann Wall wrote an adventure. You can now buy that adventure, on D&D Beyond. So I could see them going that route where they basically stop making books. They are producing system content like new character classes, new feats, and all that other stuff. And they're relying on third parties to do all the adventures, and it just becomes a volume game. Like just, a new release every week or multiple new releases every week on D&D Beyond. And it's just like, look, there's so much stuff. It's like Steam. There's so much stuff available here. And even though this might be a smaller crowd than maybe we used to sell to with Amazon, we're okay because it's really healthy margins. And it also has the advantage of, if you've done any like mobile apps, if you've ever worked in that space, it's just, the marketing is literally just pour money into marketing and money comes out the other end in new users. Because you have a direct, like, here's my Google ad. You click on it and it takes you right to my storefront. Like, you like that art and here it is. Here's the thing that you thought would look cool. You can buy it right now for $5. So I think that's like case A, where Wizards basically abandons print publishing. And I think that might be where they're going to go, like just based on looking at how the business is evolving. And like, they're opening up the throttle on getting more and more stuff on D&D Beyond. And I think the collectible versions of the core rulebooks, I think, is what has saved their sales. Because what I'm hearing is mass market, there's just really no sales. Like those dreadful book scan numbers you're seeing, I think those are 100% accurate. Like I think they are just not selling much product now through Barnes & Noble and Amazon. I think that's by design because I think they just don't want to even service that channel. Through hobby stores, they sold lots of the collectible versions. But now my experience, what I'm seeing, kind of starting to hear, is like the regular editions are kind of piling up. Like it's not like, say, when 5th edition launched, which admittedly back in 2014, they printed a lot fewer books. So this is, but you're not seeing, there's like just people coming in every day looking for the new edition, right? It's like, no, the collectors showed up, the hardcore people showed up, they bought their collector's editions, and then they're not buying anything else. So I think that's what might be where we are, which I think is why we're seeing like these $1 million Kickstarters. I think people kind of checking out other games. I think we're seeing this slow transformation of a D&D dominated hobby to a hobby instead where D&D is like the biggest, but it doesn't dominate the conversation the way it used to. And I think largely because 5th edition just is not innovating. I think a lot of gamers kind of feel like I do, which is just like, I've been playing this game for 10 years. I'm bored with it. I want to keep role playing. But it's nothing that's got my attention. I looked at the new rules, didn't see anything that was so great that I want to, like, in fact, I feel like it was harder for me to run. And so I think that then opens up a lot of possibilities for game stores maybe to start carrying more stuff. But I think more importantly, we're just seeing online. It's a very online model where like every publisher I talk to talks about selling direct to people. People come to their website, buy books straight from them, or Kickstarter, right? Which is essentially a direct, you're buying directly from me.
Yeah.
So that's scenario A. Scenario B is it's scenario A, except they haven't achieved escape velocity. Like they wanted to do that, but the sales just aren't there. So like they just canned Project Sigil, right? Like their 3D virtual tabletop. And the trick here is like that's either like a, oh my God, like they're relying on that for so much of their revenue, and killing this means they're kind of killing D&D. So that's like, oh, okay, that could be a thing. Or it could be the opposite. Like, hey, they're confident enough in their D&D business, and they just didn't have much confidence in this segment of it that, like, look, let's just cut our losses right now. Like, we don't think this is going to make its money back. We're confident in the rest of the business, so we don't need this. So unfortunately, everybody, we're cutting this. My experience in business is, like, choosing what not to do is far more important than choosing what to do. And so it could just be a case of them saying, we gave it a shot, but it's just not working. So let's just cut our losses and focus on the stronger parts. But there is, so I think if they were still trying to do Sigil, I'd be more convinced this could be a scenario where they need Sigil to like make the business work. But I don't think they're in that point. I think they might be in a point where it's sustainable. But in case it isn't, you could then see them maybe licensing out D&D, or essentially just running D&D Beyond as an online service, but not actually putting many resources into it. Just letting it kind of lay fallow. Like, okay, we'll just, we're going to cut back the number of releases. We're not making a lot of investment in the game. We're just kind of letting it kind of sit there. I mean, like we said earlier, like when we were talking, like the 4th edition character builder, we were still running that for like several years after 5th ed launched, because there were enough people using it. Like, why not just keep it running? It's just, we're making money and we're making the people using it happy. They get to use it. So let's just keep it going. So I think that's like the mid case. They tried to make this digital shift, but it doesn't work. And so then D&D probably ends up getting licensed out, or just essentially put on the sideline, which again opens up space for third parties. And this is funny because I'm going to force myself to come up with a fourth scenario, because now the third scenario is they're doing that, but they decide, you know what? Hasbro is $4 billion in debt. We can't let a brand just lie fallow. We need to charge this thing up. Let's do a new edition. And this is where you get very dangerous territory of like, well, fifth edition sucks. It's the worst. People who like fifth edition are idiots. Let's get rid of them. We need to bring in a hip, young, new audience that like. Now, I don't think this one's going to work, and this will happen just by looking at the audience, like how things are going. I think that they are much more like in scenario A right now, but this is one where they decide let's junk fifth and do a completely new mission to reinvigorate the business. So the business is failing, but we're willing to make an investment. So in this case, they probably end up blowing up the business and killing D&D again, because I just don't think they right now have the R&D capability to do a new edition. Plus, the audience just doesn't trust them. Now, I guess I'm going to say like a fourth scenario. It's funny because I'm like going through these. Hey, none of these involve them being like wildly successful. Because I'm just not seeing it. Right, like right now, I just don't see any indicator other than the Wizards press releases that are like, "This is awesome and everything's going great." But I think even in that world, I think we have. Like I saw this quote from Matt Colville. I think I was on some social media. And he was basically like, the sum of it was, and I hope apologies to Matt if I'm saying this, but basically like, why does everyone think that this time is so different? Like D&D has always gone through phases of like, oh, people like it, people don't like it. What's different now? And to me, it's like wild that Matt Colville's saying that, because I'm like, Matt, the difference is in 1989, I couldn't watch Steve Wick on YouTube telling me about his game. I couldn't like log on to like a Zoom call and play Ars Magica with people like from Minnesota who also like this game. Like we went through this phase, but in the end, D&D always won because nobody had access to distribution and like the cultural zeitgeist that D&D had. That brand name opened up tons of doors. Those doors are now irrelevant. You don't need any of those doors. You just need motivated people online who are like, hey, I think your thing is cool, and we also now live in a world where, in 1998, if I wanted to do an RPG company, I needed to hire like 10 people to just do the work. And now it's like, I mean, I'm doing this myself. It's like, I can just write a game. I can freelance out everything on it. I can plan on a Kickstarter and figure out the money. And I don't need this thing to like sustain me forever. Like I already have a full-time job. Like I can just do this in my spare time and deliver something that could actually take off. Like, I couldn't do that in 1998. Like I'd be spending most of my time trying to figure out like distributor orders and figure out how to warehouse stuff and everything. Like it is a wildly different environment now we live in. And I think the problem is D&D is optimized for like I'm going to say pre-internet, but that's way overselling it. But basically pre-Kickstarter, pre-direct sales. Like they're moving into that with D&D Beyond. But I think their problem with D&D Beyond is because the system is so complicated, it's overly complicated. And I get it. In 2014, it was not a complicated system because it was being compared to Pathfinder. But now it's getting compared to like Powered by the Apocalypse or, Shadow Dark, and stuff like that, where now it does look like, wow, it's a really intricate system to do something. I could just do this with Shadow Dark. And I think what people are finding is they're not missing it. They're not like, God, I wish we had bonus actions and all this tracking and these conditions. Like, the tastes have shifted. And that's another thing I think we hadn't seen before, because since everyone came in with D&D and couldn't find other games, at least, it was hard to find a critical mass of a game. You just didn't have the splintering now that I think we're seeing in the audience. I was at GaryCon last weekend and I didn't see a single person playing D&D 2024 5.5. Now I know they were there. Like I'm not to say like, oh, there's no game, but like it was just interesting. Like if you were just to walk around the convention, you wouldn't know that a new edition of D&D had just come out a few months ago. You wouldn't know there was a new monster. You think Shadow Dark was the biggest thing because there was banners for it and everyone wearing T-shirts for it and everyone's talking. And people online want to like poo-poo that, like, oh, that's such few numbers. Like, dude, you guys, that's not how culture works anymore. Like, culture is driven by the mavens, by like people who are like plugged in and talking about stuff. Like, you can't. It's why games journalism is dying. Because before it used to just be like, oh, if I get my game on the cover of Game Informer in like 1999, I'm the biggest thing. Everyone's talking about me. Now nobody cares. Like that literally doesn't exist because it doesn't work anymore, right? Like being on the cover of Game Informer, I think Game Informer is dead. I think, or they're trying to bring it back. Like getting Polygon to talk about my game, I don't think that does anything now. As opposed to saying, if some streamer like Asmongold or Hassan was like, if Hassan was like, I'm getting into tabletop role playing games, there's a good chance he'd be pulling out like a Powered by the Apocalypse game. Right? And like now his like hundreds of thousands of people are like looking to him like, hey, what game should I be playing, Hassan? Because we're like very similar in our tastes, politics and stuff, tastes is there too. Like, okay, cool. I'm gonna go buy, Wander Home, or something like that. Like, because I just think that's how things work now. So yeah, I am very curious to see where things go. And I don't know if D&D can ever, short of D&D just doing an awesome game. Like that's the other thing that could happen. So this new version of D&D comes out. It's awesome, right? It's just, I mean, Bud, you're a Warhammer fan. I don't know if you played the miniatures game, but I went through that Warhammer 40K 8th edition.
A bit,
yeah. So when Warhammer 40K 8th edition came out, Games Workshop actually reached out to me because I think I had known some of those guys like professionally. And they sent me an 8th edition starter set. And I hadn't played Warhammer like in 15, 20 years. And I was like, oh, this is just the best version. Like that game is awesome. Like this is how I always wanted 40K to work. So I got super back into it. Right. So, but I think Games Workshop showed people bash on them for their pricing and all that. But at the end of the day, Games Workshop makes awesome games with awesome models. And I think now.
They really do. But they charge awesome prices as well.
They charge awesome price, but those models, man, like they look like fantastic. And I think
they are museum quality, aren't they?
And they're fun to paint. And so I think that's the kind of the X factor is they could always just deliver a super awesome take on D&D, but I just don't know if they have the R&D capability to do that. Not that it's against any of the people there by any means. It's just R&D requires a culture where you're okay with people failing a lot. And, it also requires a culture of like brutal honesty. Like I just had a meeting this morning talking about, a game we're working on where we had to have a really tough, fraught conversation about a design direction. But because we had that tough conversation, the game's a lot better now. But if you're worried about losing your job, like if your company's having layoffs every month, it's really tough to have that. Like if you think I might just get someone mad and then my name's next on the list.